So 1.4 number 4, basically what this question is asking is, if you take a look at this graph, what is the restricted domain? So that is what values of x, right? Values of x should you consider if the function also has an inverse that is function. So remember with the horizontal line test, when we draw a horizontal line, if it cuts more than once, then the inverse is not a function. So they're saying, how can we just consider part of this domain, part of the x values, so that the reciprocal is a function? So let's see, just real quick here, let's 2, 3, so here we go. This is the y equals x line, right? So the reciprocal function would look something like, I guess something like this, and something like, where am I going to go here? Something like this, I guess. Okay, so that's the inverse function. Sorry, I said reciprocal. The inverse function. Now, this is not a function in the red graph yet. But if I were to consider just, now this is going to be tough to do, but just this part of the original graph, just half of the problem, if I slice it right down the middle, the reciprocal to this one, I said reciprocal again, the inverse to this one would be just the bottom half of the graph. You see, if I just focused on this part of the original graph, then just this part of the reciprocal graph would be its inverse. And this itself is a function. So remember, just drawing it again, if I have this for just this half for the original graph, then I would have something like just this half for the inverse graph. And both of these are functions. So the restricted domain would be everything from the vertex, either less than, or from the vertex to the right. So consider this. This would be the other half of the parabola, and this would be the other half of the inverse, right? So if I took away this one and this one, again, I have a restricted domain for the original function that yields a function for its inverse. So you could do either one. So for this question, let's go back here then. What you would say is, what's the restricted domain here? X is either less than or equal to 0. So that's one answer, okay? Because that would be just this part, right? Yielding whatever that part. Or you can say the domain is x greater than or equal to 0, and that would be like this one right up here. Okay? So because there's two halves of that inverse function, then you just take half of the original, and it corresponds with just one of those top half or bottom half. Does that make sense? Yeah, does that help? Anybody else have any questions about that? It might be as clear as mud, but we're trying to get this situation or the situation where we have just half a function for the inverse. Okay.